Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life that really feels good because, after all, that's what we really want. We want to feel good. Hey, I'm your host and coach, Fletcher Ellingson. Amy is out today, but don't worry, she'll be back next week with another interesting health topic. In the meantime, she said, take care of yourself. Get outside, move your body, fuel that body with some healthy foods. Remember, health is the first wealth. Hey, before we go any further, I want to remind you that if you have questions that you'd like us to answer on or off the air, email those directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. You don't need to suffer and try to figure it out all on your own. That can be exhausting, and it can be frustrating, and it can be depressing. Use the resources that are out there. Talk to people. There are answers and solutions and ways to get unstuck and move forward powerfully. I also want to remind you that you can visit me at my website at fletcherellingson.com. I've got a number of free resources there to check out. You can get a free copy of my ebook, take the happiness quiz there, which will kind of give you a bird's eye view of how your life is going. And I'll personally send you feedback on the results of the quiz. And you can also listen to my podcast there. It's a great way to stay in the personal development conversation. And as you know, this is, to me, the most important conversation there is. All right, let's get to today's email. It says, Dear Fletcher, I know that you are a goal setter, so am I. However, I'm pretty hit and miss, and mostly miss when it comes to hitting my goals. Every year I set goals, every year I hit some of them, but there are a lot I don't even come close to hitting. I set some really good ones this year, and I'm wondering if you have any advice or tips on how to do a better job hitting them. If I could hit my goals this year, life would be so good. What do you have for me? Signed, Motivated to Win. I love that. Hey, Motivated to Win, thanks for reaching out. Reaching out, as we say here on the show, is always a sign of strength. And that means you are strong because you reached out. And I got to just ask you, the people listening, like, can you relate to this? I mean, I certainly can. I am a goal setter, and I make lots of goals every year. But boy, haven't there been some times when you've set those goals and you miss them or don't even come close? I really appreciate this conversation. And Motivated to Win, I love that you're setting goals for yourself. It can be so fun. It's a really fun game to play. It can stretch you. You can learn new things about yourself. And they can really enrich your life. And you are correct, I'm a goal setter. I love to hit my goals, and I do a pretty darn good job of it. But there are always some goals that I don't, that I miss. And I got to tell you that I really like to ponder those. I like to get curious about what happened. Like, what got in my way? Was it something physical? Meaning, did I get sick? Did I break my leg and I couldn't hit my running goal? Or was it something in my mindset? And guess what? More often than not, the main reason I don't hit a goal is because of my mindset, what's going on up here. Because I had what it took to do it physically, intellectually, energetically, but there was something in my mindset that was holding me back. Now, sometimes I don't hit a goal because I realize during the year that that particular goal isn't important to me anymore, or it doesn't align with the rest of my outcomes that I've got in store for myself. Or I realize that it's not the right time to be working on it. But again, the main reason that I personally don't hit the goals that I don't hit is not because I lack the financial means or because I don't have the time. It is usually something in my mindset. And it's a little bit humbling to admit that, because what I'm saying is I've got a bunch of excuses, basically, right? And it might be fear. It might be I associate too much pain to doing whatever it would take to hit that goal. It might be that I have a limiting belief around it, like I'm too old, or I don't have enough experience, or it probably won't work out. or I would have to get really uncomfortable, etc. You probably get where I'm coming from, right? And frequently, it's a combination of a number of those things that I just mentioned. Now, as I said, I like to get curious about what was missing in my thinking that resulted in me not hitting my goal. And so I ask you the same thing, and everyone that's listening, what might be missing for you? Sometimes it can be tempting to blame it on lack of time. There just wasn't enough time. Well, I encourage you not to use that excuse because it's rarely accurate. Sometimes it is, but it's rarely accurate. It's usually just an excuse. So I teach a course about goal setting methodology that I came up with, and it's different from most goal methodologies, such as like SMART goals. You may be familiar with SMART goals. SMART is an acronym which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Now, the SMART methodology can definitely be helpful, and I use elements of it. But there's one thing that I find is frequently missing from many of the goal-setting methods. Now, a lot of methods say you need to have an empowering why, and that's really helpful. Absolutely, I totally agree with this. Get connected to your why. And while that's important, I've worked with a lot of people who knew their why, felt connected to it, but still missed hitting the target, still missed hitting the goal, still missed making good on taking the action that was needed to hit that goal. For example, my wife and I used to lead a weekend seminar called Diabetes Smackdown, and it was for people who had type 2 diabetes or were at risk for it. Now, they all had big whys. They knew why they should be eating a more healthy diet. They all knew why they should be exercising, moving their body, and they all knew why they wanted to make the change, like so they could live longer, so they could spend more time with their children or grandchildren, so they could travel and move with ease, so they could avoid so many of the other terrible health consequences that result from the disease. But here's the thing, even though they were connected to their why, and they intellectually knew what they should be doing, they were still missing something key. And I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to share with you what I think is the missing key right after this commercial break. So stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to Live It Up. I'm so glad you're here. Today we are talking about goal setting, and we're answering an email from someone who wants advice on how to do a better job of ensuring they hit their goals. So, I mean, who doesn't want that, right? We talked about SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. That's what SMART stands for. And we also talked about getting connected to your why and how powerful that can be. But as I just shared, people who even create SMART goals, who are even in touch with a big why, can still miss their goal. How is this possible? Is there something more beyond this? And yes, there is. And because some people, even big why, SMART goals, still miss it and even give up on it. And the giving up is different than the miss, right? You may have been trying to do it, putting forth efforting, putting energy into it, but still don't quite get there. And then there are some people, and I've done this too, where I just flat out give up on it. Now, I told you I believe that there is frequently one important key piece missing, and here it is. What's frequently missing from our goal setting is an empowering story. I'll say that again. What's usually missing from goal setting methodologies is this thing called creating an empowering story. And I know firsthand that's what's usually been missing for me and for most people I know and who don't hit their goals. So what's missing is an empowering or inspiring story. Now, isn't that the same as our why? You might be asking that. Isn't that pretty much the same thing? No, it's not, and I'll explain why. Sometimes we have a powerful why, but we have a disempowering story. A disempowering story can actually trump pretty easily a powerful why. Let me give you a case in point. I was talking about the seminar before the commercial break that Amy and I used to lead for people who had type 2 diabetes or who were risk at it. It was called the Diabetes Smackdown, the Ultimate Solution. And the people who attended the Diabetes Smackdown seminar had compelling whys. They wanted to get off medication. They wanted to spend less time and money on medication and doctor visits and surgical procedures. They wanted to move with a greater sense of ease, play with their kids, and I mean, the ultimate why, they wanted to live longer. I mean, that is a compelling why. I want to live longer. However, unfortunately, some of these same people had that disempowering story. And that story sounded like this. Even though they had a compelling why, they had a disempowering story that sounded like, I don't have the willpower to make it happen. I've tried this before and I've failed. You know what? My mom or dad also had this and they couldn't beat it. They just had to live with it. So I probably can't either. I probably can't beat it. Besides, it's too late for me. I'm too old. I don't have what it takes. Let me ask you a question. Can you feel the weight of those stories? I mean, they feel heavy, right? They don't feel good. They feel heavy. They feel burdensome. Like they literally just weigh down on you. And they're so strong that they can beat the most compelling why. Even when your why is, I want to live. Now, let me share what's possible when you get a compelling why that is married with an empowering story. Because a number of those people who came to our seminar, they got a glimpse of what was possible for their lives if they begin to manage their mindset and create an empowering story. In fact, this specific group of women that I'm thinking of spent a year working on their mindset. And their story went from I can't to I can. Their story went from it's too late for me to it's the perfect time for me. It went from I don't have what it takes to I do have what it takes. Their story went from I don't have the support to I'll create the support I need to make it happen. And then they begin finding evidence in their daily lives to support this empowering, this inspiring story. In fact, their story was so empowering that it compelled them into action. They sprung into action. They began to change what they were eating, how much they were eating. They began walking at first a block or two, and then several blocks, and then a mile. They began riding their bikes. I remember specifically that one of them went out and purchased a bike because she didn't have one. So she went out and purchased a bike and began riding her bike. It had been years since she'd been on a bike. They began showing up at the pool and swimming laps. They began to lose weight. And after they went to their doctor's appointments, they learned that as a result of radically changing their mindset and therefore their actions, they lowered their blood pressure, lowered their blood sugars. They were able to lower or come off some of their medications. And what they had begun to do was to create a new level of health in their lives. I mean, isn't that cool? They literally began to create a new level of health simply by changing the story. How exciting is that? And they didn't stop there. They decided they were going to do something they had never done before. They all decided to sign up for Chelan Man Triathlon. That was, before COVID, was every summer in Chelan. Now, none of them had ever participated in an event like this. They had to swim, then bike, then run, and they all signed up. They all trained for it, and they all completed it. And one of those women was 70 years old. Boom! And that is what is possible when you have an empowering story. You know, a few weeks ago, we watched a movie that illustrated this beautifully, and I highly recommend it. The movie's called King Richard, and it features Will Smith as the father of Venus and Serena Williams, the now famed tennis star sisters. This movie really did perfectly illustrate what can happen when you have an empowering story. I won't give it away, and if you follow tennis, I mean, you'll have a good idea of what it was, but it showed how they got from zero to stardom and just like superhero tennis players. But what was awesome is that in his case, he had a compelling why, and he married that with an inspiring and empowering story. I highly recommend this movie for anyone who wants to feel inspired. Now, there's one more piece to creating a solid strategy for achieving goals. One more element that will make it all the more likely that you will hit it. And I'll share that with you when we come back from this commercial break. Hey everyone, welcome back to Live It Up. I love that you're here. I love this conversation about evolving our thinking in order to produce feel-good results in our lives. It's worth saying out loud as a reminder to ourselves that it is our thinking that determines the outcomes in our lives. Our thinking determines the outcomes in our lives. And thinking determines whether or not we're successful, right? By the way, total side conversation. How do you define success? All right? Before we get to the last piece of this, I'm just going to take a moment. Like, how do you define success? This is a really important conversation because I would assert that success is quite different from achievement. You see, sometimes people confuse the two or think that they're the same. You can have a lot of things or a lot of achievements and still not be or feel successful. We see that all the time, don't we? There have been so many famous people that we can point to that from the outside appear to have it all. And then we read in a headline in a paper or see it on TV or in our social media feed that they've ended their life because they didn't feel successful. Now, I define success as the following. I'm successful if I know who I am, if I know my desired outcome, and if I'm taking consistent action to get there. I'll say that again. If I know who I am, if I know the desired outcome that I want, and I'm taking consistent action to get there, I'm successful. Okay? So I encourage you to consider that. Notice that my definition of success has nothing to do with achievement, because achievement is completely different. So I invite you to consider that. But now let's finish up this conversation about how to ensure we hit our goals. The last thing that I want you to know is so important, and it's this. Once you think of an outcome, once you imagine it, that outcome that you want, such as a certain job or career, maybe it's owning a certain type of car or traveling somewhere, having a particular experience, maybe living somewhere, maybe it's finding that soulmate, or maybe it's selling your art and making a living, like, creating art that people appreciate and want to hang in their homes. Maybe it's inventing something. Whatever it is, the moment you think of it, it actually becomes a possibility. Oh, I really want you to hear that. The moment you think of it, it becomes a possibility, meaning it's possible. Whatever you think becomes a viable possibility the moment you think about it. Now stick with me here, all right? Because sometimes when we hear things like this, our brain wants to resist it and object. But just stick with me. I'm going to explain why this is important. You see, everything that used to seem impossible became impossible when someone imagined it. Once upon a time ago, no one believed that traveling to the moon and back was possible until someone thought that it was. I mean, really get that. I mean, most people thought traveling to the moon, like, there's no technology for that. Of course it's impossible. Until somebody actually thought that it was possible. The thought of building a rocket that could be powered to the moon, land, and then return safely to most people sounded crazy, sounded impossible, sounded like a fictitious science fiction story. Yet all it took was for one person to believe. And then on September 12, 1962, President Kennedy announced that the US was going to send a team of astronauts to the moon. It wasn't, we're going to think about it. It wasn't that we're going to look into this. He announced that we are going to send a team of astronauts to the moon, something never been done before. And at that time that he announced it, we didn't have the capability. The technology didn't exist. We didn't know the how. We didn't know what it would take. But because someone thought it, it became a real possibility. And then this next part is what blows me away. Just under 7 years, they did it. In just 7 years. It's unbelievable. And then after that, look what became possible. The space shuttle, the space station, and even sending a rover to explore the surface of Mars. And of course, there's talk about colonizing another planet. Now, years ago, everyone would have laughed at that. But now, because someone thought it, it actually has become a possibility. And there are organizations all over the world working on the technology to do exactly that. We already have people living in space for extended periods on the space station. We've reached a point where we can have, where we've sent everyday people into space who had very little training for it. We've got devices that we carry around in our pockets and play music, record images, connect us with other people, can be used for diagnosing illness, identifying plants and birds. It's like a magical device in your pocket, all because someone thought of it. I'm going to give you one last example before we wrap up here. For many years, it was believed that no one could run a mile under 4 minutes. In fact, it was widely held that it was impossible. They actually thought that it might, if someone attempted to do it, it could cause the runner to have a heart attack. They thought their heart might burst. Yet there was someone who thought he could do it. And in that moment of him thinking it could be done, it became a possibility. And in 1954, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile time, coming in at 3 minutes and 59 seconds. I mean, how beautiful is that? And then what happened? Well, it was just a few weeks later that someone else then broke the 4-minute mile because it was now possible. And then soon after that, another person and another person. And it became possible the moment someone thought about it. And now, the world record for running a mile stands at 3 minutes and 43 seconds. Unbelievable. What's my point? My point is this: because you have thought it, it becomes a real possibility. You may not know the how just yet, but you can know it is possible. The old thinking that it's not possible is not accurate. So know that what you want is possible. Create a compelling why, and finally an empowering and inspiring story that your mind can focus on. Like, I have what it takes. I'm resourceful and capable and flexible. Good things are lined up, stacked up, and showing up daily in my life. I can create the support I desire. It's possible. Others have done it, and so can I. All that I need is within me now. Those are some of my empowering stories, and I invite you to try them on and see if they serve your life. And I hope they do. In fact, I know they will. In closing, I just want to say thanks for spending this time with me. Now it's time to get out there, be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You do have something to offer this world, and I believe in you.